Hey guys, welcome back to We Watched Movie. I am Mike, and this is the latest version of Just Like Scream, where we take a movie that was inspired by Wes Craven's 1996 classic, and we talk about all the Screamisms inside of it and just enjoy being alive. But first, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Frome. Frome sent me this beautiful picture that might just look like a nice, classy piece of art to you, something that you wouldn't see in my house, which is true, or at least my area of the house, I should say. Sorry, honey. What they do here is they take the scenes from your favorite movie, in which case, Scream, take all the main colors from it and create a beautiful piece of artwork in it that you could hang anywhere in your house and your significant other can't complain, because it's art. Damn it. This is the one for Scream, and it's got this beautiful frame that you can have put around it that's amazing. And if you don't have room in your house because your house looks like a freaking Applebee's like mine does sometimes, they have iPhone and Samsung cases that you can have the piece of art imprinted on as well and sent to you in both snap cases and the harder, tougher ones. So, and it's much better to come home to and find hanging from the wall than, Drew Barrymore from a tree outside. Just in my personal experience, at least. Check out Frome in the link below. Or I'll gut you like a... No. All right, so Just Like Scream Freaky. This one came out in 2020. It was right during the pandemic, and it was a whole mess of how it got put out there to the world. We were happy to have it at the time because we weren't getting much going on, but Christopher Landon directed this, and as you know, I had the disturbing behavior Just Like Scream filmed, but I bumped it up a little bit for this one because Christopher Landon just got named the director of Scream 7, as you'll see in our Scream update videos. By the way, click subscribe and the bell. If you miss any of this stuff, your parents will never forgive you. They're going to be so mad at you. And Christopher Landon's also done kick-ass films like Disturbia with Shia LaBeouf. He's done Happy Death Day 1 and 2. He's done a whole bunch of horror films that do feel like Scream, and this is written by Christopher Landon as well as Michael Kennedy, who's one of the people who there are rumors that, hey, just because they work together so often, he could end up being one of the writers on Scream 7. We'll see. Freaky is Freaky Friday mixed with Halloween, Friday the 13th, Scream, all that stuff. Vince Vaughn plays a character named the Butcher, who's a serial killer, and his body gets swapped with a teenage girl, and that is freaky, and it's meant to be a comedy. A lot of people saying, oh, I don't think Christopher Landon can do the horror version of Scream because all of his films are so comedic, and we've talked about that. This is another film made by Blumhouse. The movie's meant to be a comedy. It's not trying to scare you at any time. It's sort of like The Blackening in that sense. There are gory kills, yes, and it's a slasher movie at times for sure, but it's never trying to be scary, I feel like. It's just trying to talk about horror tropes and make this entertaining, almost action-like Freaky Friday horror film. And in a lot of ways, it's a lot more like Friday the 13th than it is even like Scream, just in the way that the killer moves, the Butcher. His dress is just like, he's got this like 90s long sleeve with a t-shirt over top of it. I still wear that kind of shit today. I love it, don't get me wrong. But his mask is just kind of strapped on, but just the way he lumbers around. There's even a Friday the 13th tribute where he busts through a door and looks just like Jason busting through the side of a camp house or whatever. There's a Jason X type kill where he locks a teenager in by the way, there's possible definite spoilers in this if you've never seen Freaky, where he locks a teenager in one of those crypto things that people get into after workouts. I don't know. I'm not rich enough to have ever used one, but he locks her in there and turns it all the way up. And when she comes out, she hits the floor. And it's a lot like the Jason X kill when he puts her face underwater and it just cryogenically freezes and breaks up. There's a scene later in the movie where he, as the Butcher, kills 3 teenage jocks, and just the way that whole thing works out, it's way more Halloween Kills with Michael Myers tearing people apart in the street than it is, Scream, but all of them are mixed in. There's also the Friday the 13th type lettering and the Friday the 13th themes that are all throughout this movie, but really, at the end of the day, there's still a ton of Screamisms that come into Freaky. And if you're looking for pure horror, if you're looking for Scream, you're going to find it in the first act of this more than anything. So many people in Christopher Landon got hired to do Scream 7 reference this specific moment, the opening of the movie. A bunch of teens hanging out in a house. The house literally looks like Stu's house. So in this opening, he's killing these teens off one by one. It's just 4 teenagers hanging out in a house, partying, drinking, fucking whatnot. And he's walking around picking them off. When the camera pans out, the house literally looks just like Stu's house from Scream. And on the inside of the house, it reminds you of the house in Scream 3 with all these trap doors and stuff. Just like my dad's an art collector, there's stuff all over the place, which is where he gets this magical knife that ends up running most of the movie. It'll also, even though that came after, obviously reminds you a little bit of Scream 5, how it toys with you. It knows that you know the horror tropes, and it's moving the camera down with a teen as he goes to pick up a broken glass, and as the camera moves up, you expect the killer to be over his shoulder, but he's not there, and they toy with you. It's sort of like a silent meta horror trope that they're doing in the opening of this, and you know the movie's at least semi-self-aware already. Speaking of wine, there's an amazing wine kill in the movie that just sets it all off. That, don't tell me he can't do gore and gnarly kills, because this has all of that in it. The guy bends backwards, he shoves an entire wine bottle down his throat, and then it breaks apart, opening out through his neck while wine gushes out. Amazing kill, great practical effects in that moment, even if that kill was definitely done first in Sorority Row, another movie we've done just like Scream 4. I'll put it at the end of this video. Even though it's been done before, it was still done well, and I like it. The next kill that comes right up is the toilet kill, where he puts someone's head underneath a toilet and smushes and breaks her face with the toilet seat. It's gnarly as hell, and it's Scream as fuck the way it transitions, because as he's doing this and she's screaming and he's killing her, it's right to a girl's face pushed up against the hood of a car while she's having sex with this dude. The way it goes directly from the horror to the comedy with that music crescendoing right in between, and then all of a sudden Butcher pops up behind him, breaks a tennis racket in two, and stabs him in the face. Now, I will say that kill was a little bit corny. You know what I mean? You wouldn't see that in a Scream movie. It was a little too much, but it was still fun for this movie. And then finally, you've got the main girl who he takes down with this spear. It's very Jason in this moment. Again, the way he busts through the door and then he throws the spear. But when he picks her up and he slams her body onto it, hanging her from there, you also get the meta-ness with the Michael Myers where he twists his head and looks at her. But Scream as fuck. The parents are coming home right as this happens, and you hear the parents' conversation just a little bit, just like you did in Scream. In the original Scream, he's like, there's something wrong with the fish, or whatever he said. I told you could send it back. And comes in and he sees the house on fire. And this time the mom's like, she better not have any boys over. And the dad's like, well, she better not, because if she does, I'm gonna fucking. And then right then they see her hanging there. The camera zooms up, and it's just like when the parents got home and then eventually saw Drew Barrymore hanging from that tree, only just comedic and lighthearted. And then boom, title drop, freaky in all the letters. So fucking Screamish. And this feels like a good time to mention that it does feel a little, as a whole movie, a little loosey-goosey here throughout. I mean, it kind of feels sort of like one of those direct-to-Hulu, direct-to-Netflix things. And this should have been in theaters for sure, but it just kind of has that vibe to it that adds to the comedic vibes of it and all of that. And part of that's the budget and the time frame they had to work with. When you look at a movie like Scream, for instance, Scream 5 was $24 million. Scream 6 cost $35 million. They made Freaky for a lowly $6 million in a tight time frame. And then we go straight from the title drop to the innocent girl bedroom. And I mean, this literally could have been Sidney Prescott's bedroom, but that's where we find Catherine Newton, who played as Cassie in Ant-Man, and she's fucking awesome in this movie. I love Alison Lohman from Drag Me to Hell. I think is an amazing final girl that we never got to see that much of. I hope it's not the same case with Catherine Newton, because I think she kicks fucking ass in this, and I would love to see her in the Scream franchise. She would fit so perfectly in the Scream franchise, and I really hope she ends up being a part of it. Just like Samara Weaving. She reminds me of Sidney Prescott. She reminds me, or Neve Campbell, she reminds me of Samara Weaving. So good. But yeah, this is a straight up Sidney Prescott bedroom. It could have been the same one. She goes downstairs and her story is so alike to different trappings of Scream. For instance, her older sister is literally a sheriff's deputy that reminds you of the Sheriff Dewey connection with Tatum's brother. And then on the flip side of that, her dad has been dead for about a year. Obviously in Scream, the mom's been dead for about a year. There's just so many tiny little things that match her right up to Sidney. And even when she's walking through the halls in school, this dude runs up and jump scares her and like barks at her, and she gets thrown up against the lockers. I mean, come on, it's the exact same as in Scream when that dude wearing the ghost face mask did it to Sidney. The students feel like Scream students when they go to the school, and you see the school, the colors are very close to Woodsboro High colors with the yellows and blues as well. It's very, very obviously a nice little ode to Wes Craven's Scream in these moments. And they kind of overplay the whole loser card with her, because there's there's jocks being like, I'd only do it if you put a bag over her head, and everybody's so shitty and mean to her, and you're just like, I mean, come on, look at her. That would not be the situation in real life. So you have to stretch believability a little bit for that. But I will say this, you do feel bad for her. Everyone's so mean to her, especially the dude from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I mean, he's a fucking dick. The way that the students find out about the murders is very Screamish as well. They're all sitting in the class and they all get this sort of Amber Alert to their phone, which just kind of reminds you of Scream and how sort of cold everybody reacts to it, but also in shock. And it shows them talking about it. And I love the way that they put technology into this movie. Like, it's as if Scream were happening today, how they would do it. They're looking at TikToks of girls acting like the slain victims were their best friends and making fun of them, again with the Amber Alerts on their phone. Just a nice subtle touch to kind of update that whole what it would be like to be in a high school where a bunch of people are being brutally murdered feel. They even announced, by the way, over the intercoms that not only is the homecoming dance canceled, but that there's going to be a citywide curfew. And also just the streets of this town remind you specifically of Scream 4. The whole town with the curfew and everything going on, and just the way it looks, it's just not the glossiness or that terrible super bright cinematography sheen, but just the way the city looks. It just has total Scream 4 vibes for whatever reason. Now, a lot of the meta and horror references are unspoken and shown rather than talked about through the characters, which was a neat way of not directly copying and pasting it like some just like Scream movies tend to do. But in this, there are still several of them. Like, for instance, at one point she puts on, or Vince Vaughn as her puts on the Aaron Rodgers mask, and he's walking around and he's like, how the fuck do I can't see shit in this mask? Like, how do killers do this? And little stuff like that actually references movies. That kind of makes it feel a little bit like Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon type stuff. There's Strode on the back of one of the football players' jerseys, and there's the head tilt we talked about at the beginning. There's a lot of horror references in this movie. There's even a couple of Scream-ish type chase scenes as well that happen. For instance, with the best friend when his mom gets home and he's got her tied up and ends up chasing him through the house, and the knife through the door and all that stuff. And with the music can hit or miss. It's a little too whimsical to feel very much like Scream, but there are times like during those chase scenes where it does fit the Scream vibe completely perfect. And finally, of course, it all ends with her in the back of an ambulance, like half the Scream movies do, covered with a blanket and having conversation as everything wraps up around her. Now, that does happen in a lot of movies, but it seems to happen in Scream specifically lately a lot. And there's the killer coming back one last time again, although this time he comes back completely. They take him away in an ambulance, and it's more of a Halloween 4 situation where he kills the people in the ambulance. They don't show it. I wish they had. And then he shows up at her house, and she ends up fucking Mark Wahlberg fearing him in the back.
You will forever hold your peace.
Like Reese Witherspoon did to Mark Wahlberg in Fear, I should say, with this piece of wood, just stabbing in the back with it and then kicking it through him. And then she ends with a badass Sydney-esque one-liner when she says, I am a fucking piece. And then boom, title drop on the movie. So there's all the things that I noticed that were very Scream-like in the movie. Just mainly the whole vibes of the city, the teenagers, and the obvious references to Scream. The movie as a whole, though, I think it's great. I think, as I said, she is absolutely amazing in it. I liked the friends. I found them interesting. I found them not annoying, too over the top. I really just enjoyed everybody in this movie and the storyline that goes along with it as well. Specifically, it was such a perfect vehicle for Vince Vaughn and Vince Vaughn's brand of comedy. I feel like his whole thing was amazing with like Old School and Wedding Crashers, but it felt like people were just having him do the same stick over and over again. And also kind of the death of comedy has happened recently. So this was a great way to take his talents and show them off in a fresh new way by having him run around like a teenage girl. It had to be fun for him to do something out of type, but also still be able to use his comedic abilities, and genius fucking casting when it comes to her, the people around her, and specifically Vince Vaughn. I hope that Christopher Landon has something to do with the casting of Scream 7, because clearly he knows how to fucking do it. There's even a nice low-key emotional tie-in and grab to all this with the mom and the way she's dealing with the death of the dad. There's that scene where she's talking to Vince Vaughn in the dressing room, and it actually got, almost misty-eyed in there. It was a really nice and subtle and well done emotional pool. And you know, it does work as a comedy. It's really funny several times throughout. It's not scary or suspenseful at all, but again, that's what they're going for here. They're going for, you can't have Vince Vaughn running around going, oh my God, and doing all this stuff and do this Freaky Friday story and then really have super over the top dreadful themes. They skew too comedic to actually try to do what Scream does. There's a couple things that they play a little loosey-goosey. For instance, like just tiny little stuff with plot holes and things like that, where like the teacher, who's a huge dick, she is literally, his student in his eyes is trying to ice pick him to death, and he knocks her down, is like, now go to the principal's office. And you're like, what? But speaking of that guy, he also had an amazing kill with the saw that he got pushed through and cut all the way in half. Just a fantastic kill. I can't wait to see what some of these Scream 7 kills look like. And I also feel like it's a little bit of a plot hole that more people didn't die in this. When you've got this crazed psychopath in the butcher, in her body, able to infiltrate anyone and anywhere in the school, she could have killed 100 people in this, and it's a very low body count for the potential of a serial killer actually in that situation. I feel like all in all, it worked great. It's a great example of what Christopher Landon will be able to do with Scream once he's got a little bit more money, a little bit more time, and able to take it, to have it be a little bit more serious when it needs to be. I think it's going to be great. And the movie still had balls despite all of this. I mean, for Christ's sake, they had Vince Vaughn making out with a high school teenager, and the way they did that by using the hand on the face was great. But I really enjoyed Freaky. I give it an 8 out of 10. I think it checked every box it meant to check, and just a nice little homage to not only Scream, but Freaky Friday, Halloween, Friday the 13th, all of it in one giant big fucking hodgepodge. I like it, Steve. But anyway, make sure you check out our other Just Like Scream videos. Click that subscribe button and that bell to notify you when we have Scream updates and whatnot, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the Scream universe. And don't forget to check out From in the link below. I love your fucking faces. I hope you guys have an amazing day.
Mom and Dad are gonna be so mad at me when they find out I'm in love with my friend Billy. Well, he's got a white shirt, tight little jeans, kinda wanna put my P in his B. He hit me with the phone, I wished it was his dick. You cut me too deep this time. You cut me too deep this time. Woodsboro will never know me and Billy were more than bro. So get it up, leave her alone. He was my Sharon Stone.